The third key, the key of crisis. View each crisis as a crash course in calm. Quotes. My foot slips on a narrow ledge. In that split second, as needles of fear pierce heart and temples, eternity intersects with present time. Peter Matheson. Simplicity in action without idea. And that is what we do in crisis. Krishna Murti. Crisis is the exquisite agony which a man might not want to experience again, yet would not have for the world missed. Richard Nixon. The third key to calm. In a memoir, David Livingstone, the 19th century African explorer who set out to find the source of the Nile, recounted a vivid tale of being caught by a lion and squeezed in its jaws. He survived only because he was saved at the last possible moment by a friend's marksmanship and some extraordinary luck. Livingstone recalled the episode in great detail, and he claimed he experienced at the very moment he was in gravest danger of being gummed into oblivion, an astounding sensation of pure calm was his attitude in the face of the immediate crisis and anomaly, perhaps because he was by nature a daring and adventurous soul. Certainly, literature is replete with stories of celebrated pilgrims and pathfinders who faced and surmounted harrowing circumstances with legendary resourcefulness and grace. But you don't need to be a professional hero to act like one when the chips are down. As nearly everyone, adventurer or accountant, mountaineer or office manager who has faced a crisis and lived to tell will tell you pure calm is often precisely what arises within oneself when circumstances are at their most dire. Rising to the occasion. This reminds me of the Sizzler song. In my life, I have known numerous ordinary people who have faced acute crisis of the most dramatic nature. In some instances, their houses have literally burned to the ground or been shattered by earthquake. Some of these people, indeed probably most of them, would never have supposed themselves the sort to act decisively and constructively in mid-apocalypse. Yet when their respective moments of truth arose, they were able to act with confidence, clarity, and self-command. They rescued themselves, their children, their cats, and parakeets, salvaged their prescription glasses, and snagged their kid's favorite stuffed animal as everything else around them crumbled. Then, too, there are the countless numbers of people who have weathered with far more courage and resilience than they would have ever foreseen commonplace life crisis, less dramatic but equally traumatic, such as divorce or financial reversals, or the loss of a loved one, or the contraction of a serious illness. Crises crises are a part of life. As one of Tennessee Williams' characters said, quote, "We all live in a house on fire. No fire department to call," unquote. Arguably, though, they are a valuable and necessary part. For as another playwright, Eugene Ionesco, said, quote, "All history is nothing but a succession of crises. When there is no crisis, there is stagnation, petrification, and death. Each of us probably has already faced numerous crises in the course of our existence. Most of us were probably better at facing them, braver, saner, and yes, calmer than we would have ever dared to hope. But we rarely, if ever, think about how we did it and from where we drew our strength. And so we miss the significance of crises, opting instead to anxiously try and prevent another one from occurring in the future. The Anticrisis. Since the dawn of civilization, humankind and its collective busy mind has been irresistibly drawn to the enticing idea that circumstances might be controlled and disasters averted if only the right approach could be found. Each culture in each era develops crisis-proofing techniques. In earlier times, sacrifices were made to gods and spirits in hopes that as a quid pro quo, droughts or floods might end, battles might be won, and plagues and pestilence be vanquished. Nowadays, we tend to invoke insurance agents and lawyers instead of spirits, spending vast sums of money and energy trying to ensure our future security. We eagerly purchase policies meant to offset our losses in the event of this calamity or that catastrophe. We instigate lawsuits to seek remuneration for every ill that befalls us. And even though the nature of life is, as philosopher Alan Watts said, quote, "the unknown coming into being," unquote, we anxiously attempt to think of and make provisions for every conceivable worst-case scenario before it happens. Prenuptial agreements. Anyone? One couple gained national notoriety when they filed with their county clerk's office a 16-page document specifying not only when they would have children and how often they would make love, but also detailing such marital minutiae as how much as they would spend on groceries and what brand of gas they would put in their car. But of course, not every worst case is conceivable. You can make an educated guess about what may happen down the road, but can you really know? No. Despite Henry Kissinger's famed quip, "There can't be a crisis next week. My schedule is already full." Crisis sneaks up on you. Without warning, it bursts the fragile balloon of your, quote, safe world, unquote. That's why they call it a crisis. You can be as painstakingly cautious and apprehensive as you'd like, but the gods give no guarantees, and neither do lawyers. Deep down, we all know uncertainty to be a fact of life. Yet most of us actively choose to live in denial of this incontrovertible truth. It is a sad irony because the idea that we can foresee and prevent our crisis is another illusion that enslaves us. It keeps us constantly nervous, hesitant, and on the defensive. What's more, it keeps us so preoccupied with dreaming up interventions to heap off troubles that we fail to recognize how the interventions themselves can sometimes lead to even graver woes. Can you imagine, for example, how many bitter quarrels about prenuptial agreements have dealt wedding plans a terminal blow? Life is so complex, its multiple aspects so subtly linked, that we cannot possibly know the effects of one tiny, quote, preventative, unquote, action on the larger picture. Unless, of course, we are omnipotent. And as you may have noticed, despite our occasional grandiose pretensions to the contrary, we do not and cannot, and indeed would not really want to know everything. Obviously, no rational person wants to deliberately court trouble and trauma. And you'll be pleased to know that incorporating the key of crisis into your life does not involve throwing caution to the winds, emptying out the bank account, ripping up insurance policies, and firing your attorney, all in hopes that a crisis will find you and test your mettle. Crisis finds us all sooner or later, and we must recognize it for the teacher it is. Indeed, we hardly have a choice but to heed its lesson because it demands our full attention. When you're in mid-inferno, you don't stop to call your Allstate agent to buy more fire insurance. It's just you and the flames, no intermediaries. Understanding the key of crisis. The third key to calm. The key of crisis says, view each crisis as a crash course in calm. So just what do we learn in Crisis 101? Think back over your life to a time when a traumatic incident occurred. Think back to a time when you found strength and resourcefulness you never knew you possessed. Remember when you literally had the thought, quote, I cannot go on, unquote, but you went. I'm going to bet you already learned a few things from that event. For example, that it is possible to be free of a sense of your own limits when you are vividly in the moment. That when you go down the path without a definite plan, doors open along the way. That your intention is keener than you expected. That your priorities can be straightened out in a hurry. That there seems to be a source of natural power that you can draw on for replenishment when you really need it. You learn these things, but alas, if you're like most of us, you have probably forgotten that you learned them. When the apex of your crisis passed, you began to go back to your old ways of thinking and being. Proving Richard Nixon was right when he said, quote, the easiest period in a crisis situation is actually the battle itself, unquote. Even with the benefit of prior experience, you are probably now doubtful that you can handle another life disruption with similar aplomb. You figure, quote, that was an exception and not the rule. Next time, I'll be a wreck, unquote. But displaying mastery when life throws you a curveball can be the rule, if you let it be. For the truth is that in order to successfully survive your past crisis, you automatically assessed the calm mind and put the busy mind on hold. Once you've done this, the calm mind will always be part of your psychic database. The Polish journalist Ryszard Kapuscinski wrote, "When questions arise that can't be answered, that's as good a definition as I've ever encountered. We say we are in crisis when we face a situation in which none of the previous patterns we learned to rely on apply. Yet somehow we plow through crisis, improvising as we go, discovering new things about ourselves and about life we would have otherwise never known. We discover that one way or another we find the answer to any challenge the universe gives us. Maybe that's why it gives them to us. The key of crisis in action. Once you begin to consider the possibility that life's crisis serves as agents of our mental, emotional, and spiritual education, then the fact that crises are inevitable will not be so anxiety-provoking. And once you begin to acknowledge that the calm mind kicks in crisis, you will be better able to draw upon its infinite adaptability and wisdom, not just at peak crisis moments, but at all times. Such beginnings are tenuous. You'll keep being drawn back to old fantasies that you can, with enough anxious forethought, keep crisis at bay. But with the right attitude, you will abandon such illusions and the anxieties they bring along with them, like so much overstuffed baggage. What is the right attitude? It can be summed up in one word: surrender. Of course, the word surrender may evoke all kinds of negative associations. We may visualize a bedraggled soldier stumbling across a battlefield, feebly brandishing a white flag that signifies "I give up." But consider another meaning of the term. In the great spiritual tradition of East and West, the concept of surrender is not meant to connote hopelessness or apathy. It is meant to convey the yielding of the individual will to the ongoing, irrepressible flow of life. It comes with letting go of fixed ideas about what should be and what will be. It is the acceptance that what is, is. Keep that definition of surrender in mind. And at a certain point each day, preferably close to waking or just before retiring, try this simple exercise. Stand or sit in a receptive position. That is, with your arms outstretched and palms turned up. Then silently think the words, "I surrender." Now your busy mind will balk when you first do this. Quote, "Oh yeah?" Unquote. It will say none too pleasantly, "You surrender to what?" Let your calm mind answer simply, to something. To something? Yes, because there is something. And it doesn't matter what you call it, fate, God, the flow of experience, or if you prefer Star Wars lingo, the Force. More powerful than us. But something is also somehow part of us, and we are somehow part of it. True, it is this something that threw you those curveballs that disrupt your life so drastically. But it is also that this something you instinctively tapped into for sustenance. And it is this something that without your even thinking about it, helps you combat genuine dangers you aren't even consciously aware you face. In actuality, each of us confronts many more potential crises in the course of a single day than the most zealous insurance underwriter ever factored into an actuarial table. Sure, sometimes you get sick, but most of the time, something keeps your immune system humming nicely along while you do, let's say, the crossword puzzle or the laundry. Sure, sometimes you have a car crash, but most days something keeps your car from veering off the road even when your busy mind wanders and you're not paying the slightest bit of conscious attention to your driving. A daily acknowledgement that there is indeed something to surrender to and that you cannot know for sure what this something has in store would take you all 5 seconds to accomplish. But its cumulative impact can yield great composure because as dusk follows day, calm follows surrender. Now I realize that performing this exercise in a formal manner just doesn't suit everyone. And if it doesn't fit your style, that's alright. Alternatively, take at least a few moments each day informally and in a matter of your own choosing to reflect on the silliness of thinking you can make everything in your life turn out just the way you want. You'll find the beneficial effects of this approach to be much the same. I remember, for example, a gentleman who participated in a psychotherapy group I conducted. He complained that he simply could not get to sleep at night, no matter what he tried. In sessions, he often yawned his way through the entire hour. Frustrated, others in the group began to offer him home remedy ideas, from hot baths to chamomile tea to calcium-laden bedtime shakes. One night he finally confessed what was keeping him up. He felt as if he had to stay awake, he told the group, in order that he wouldn't lose control over his life. At that point, someone asked him how much control, in the final analysis, he actually had over his life when he was awake. He sat silently for a minute or two and stoutly replied, "None." Then he burst out laughing. That night, he later reported he slept like a stone. The lesson is clear. In relinquishing the fantasy that you can control all events in life, you gain enhanced control over the one thing you truly can master, your own reactions and responses to events. In our society, most of us probably define fate as the extent to which the world jerks us around. It is not fate that unnerves us so much as our own refusal to believe in it. If you truly let crisis be your crash course in calm, you will rapidly learn that it can be fatal to resist fate. Struggle against a riptide and proof you're fish food. On the other hand, to really accept fate and the occasional crises it brings is hardly to be fatalistic. It is to be prepared always and continually for change. For those who wish to overcome anxiety, this is the handiest of traits. For as you shall see in the next key, the key of cycles, understanding and accepting the nature of change is a major part of what separates the calm from the not so calm.